thank you, Dean, for that very, very warm welcome, and good morning to all of you. And thanks also for inviting me here to speak. Leaders and Legends is a wonderful program, and I think I and Four Seasons are very, very, very happy to be part of it. As the Dean mentioned, we are the new kids on the block, the new kids here in Baltimore, having just opened down the street at the tail end of last year. And if you haven't already been with us, as so many of you I know have, then I would encourage you to drop by and take a look around. Julian Carolero, our general manager, he is here, and I know he and his outstanding group of employees would be just so happy to welcome you. We're very, very pleased, as you know, as an organization to be part of such a vibrant and beautiful neighborhood. And there's no question that this hotel is a landmark for us, a sleek tower setting up its wonderful position here on Harbor East. But I think as the Dean was mentioning, you'll find inside the halls and walls of that building what truly sets us apart, in fact, is our people. And if you take a little while to enjoy the spa, come to the bar, try dinner at Wit and Wisdom, you will see in the lobby, in the hallways, our employees who will welcome you with open arms in a very special type of Four Seasons hospitality. And for those of you who have stayed with us, you do know that service is the company's primary focus. It's where we began, it's where we grew, and it's where we remain today. And our main goal is to ensure that that service is delivered very genuinely and very consistently, hotel to hotel, all over the world. 35 countries today doing the same thing that we did back in Toronto 50 years ago. The magic in all of that is truly pulling it off successfully, and it is something that wouldn't surprise you to hear requires an enormous amount of commitment and intense focus on the goal. And so I'm going to start the Four Seasons story this morning by telling you a little bit about our early beginnings, because they are not well known, given that they happened in Canada. And I think it'll help everybody understand how the depth of our service culture and how our commitment to our core values as a company was really what guided us as we look to the future. So Four Seasons was born, as the Dean mentioned, a little over 50 years ago in Toronto when our founder, Isidore Sharp, opened our first hotel there. It was a motor hotel, as you know a motor hotel today. A very modest building in a very not fancy location. The reason, the land was cheap. The essential question for him then was what was going to set this hotel apart? What did customers value most? And market research even back then said that what it was luxury. But luxury in that definition didn't mean elegant surroundings and gourmet meals. When we looked at it closely, what customers were really looking for was the greatest luxury of all, which is the luxury of time. And service, we felt, could help them make the best of their time. It's luxury that is in a different form. And that's really important when you look at today as we've come through what's now called the Great Recession and the pressure that's been on the word luxury, a term that's come under great scrutiny and in fact continues to do so. Most focus upon traditional luxury 50 years ago was on a state of great comfort. We thought of it as extravagant living or an inessential but desirable item, people would say. But that definition didn't then and never has applied to Four Seasons. What we do is really provide an essential service to travelers so that they can be sure that their time, whether that's leisure or business, and more importantly, that their travel dollars are being spent wisely. It may be uncommon, but it's not extravagant. So our unwavering commitment to our brand of luxury helped us to succeed through challenges over many, many years. And as you probably have read in the newspaper, our industry was one of the hardest hit through the Great Recession. It was at the focal point of the economic downturn and the political maelstrom that followed. And individuals and businesses alike across this country and others cut their travel budgets, trying alternatives. But ultimately, and fortunately for us, they came back. Almost all of them came back to Four Seasons, and very quickly, actually, because what they saw was that the value inherent in the kind of service we provided couldn't be replaced or replicated elsewhere. They knew what we would provide, which was time saved and memories made was really the heart of what they were looking for in a hotel experience, whether that be business or leisure. Now, designing service to help very, very busy people make the most of their precious time is not quite as easy as it sounds. You see, in the business of service, there is no after-production quality control. It doesn't come off the assembly line and we get to check it before it goes out of the employee's mouth or out of their eyes or out of their expressions. Consumption and production in our business are simultaneous. So those few moments when service is delivered, either verbally or with hand gesture or sometimes sight unseen, when a room attendant is taking care of your room, it's the make or break point for a reputation like ours. And it's when the brand, the value of the brand, the value of the business proposition is confirmed or denied. And so we're in a business where the delivery of consistently superior customer service normally depends. Sometimes you'll see Julian, sometimes you'll see Sean, sometimes you'll see Cindy, but it normally depends in our hotels on the efforts of our frontline employees. And in a lot of industries, frontline employees are considered to be the least paid and therefore potentially least motivated. But for us, they represent the essence of our product to the customers. And the most realistic view of this is that they are the product. They are its personal, emotional component. So we came to understand quickly in the history of the company that positively impacting the attitudes of our employees would be a very, very unique way to affect the guest experience. You see, at Four Seasons, we believe that customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction are inextricably linked, that you can't have one without the other. Every greeting in the lobby, every conversation with a concierge, every interchange with a housekeeper, each of these moments defines and redefines Four Seasons in the eyes and the hearts of our customers each and every time. In fact, this is a relationship that begins with customers long before they ever arrive at our hotels. From the moment they speak with the reservation agent over the phone or a salesperson, we're making a first impression. And so it isn't just about some employees, it has to be about all employees. Our salespeople in particular are very, very instrumental in developing unique experiences with our guests and customers, and in some cases, lifelong friendships. They get to know customer and guest likes and dislikes. They understand specific needs, and they can help all other employees in the organization respond, not only respond, but also anticipate those needs and wants, and therefore execute on them more successfully. We're often asked if we think this quality of employee interaction is unique to the luxury hotel environment. And our answer to that is absolutely no. In our experience, employee performance is almost always likely to depend on an overall attitude. And it's an attitude that we believe is inevitably shaped and directly affected by the relationships they have with their coworkers and, most importantly, with their bosses. For our company to succeed, we knew that all employees had to share the same goals, the same beliefs, and the same values. So a few decades ago, we established a company credo, a guiding principle by which all employees would act, from the corporate offices in Toronto, Geneva, Singapore, to hotels, front office, back office, laundry facilities in Chicago, Cairo, and the like. And it was a reference point that we would come to use and, as a result, ask, is this act, this decision, this plan consistent with our core values? Very simply, and the Dean alluded to this as well, our culture is based on the golden rule. So we need to treat each other the way we would want to be treated in that particular situation. And the golden rule came to define every interaction we have with our guests, with our customers, with our business partners, but most importantly, with one another. Managers or employees who couldn't walk this talk were asked to leave, even at the most senior levels of the organization. Our principles also became the basis upon which we hire new people into the company. When we open a new hotel, we review thousands of resumes, sometimes tens of thousands, to fill a few hundred positions. After the initial screening process, Each candidate goes through 4 or 5 interviews. Yes, partly to determine skill, but mostly to evaluate attitude. To give you an example, in 2008, we opened our first hotel in India, this time in Mumbai. More than 34,000 people applied for jobs at that hotel. We conducted 15,000 interviews, and we hired 450 employees. And that's not unique for us. During our main recruitment here in Baltimore last September, we had more than 4,000 applicants. We had more than 2,000 interviews. We interviewed more than 2,000 of those applicants, and some of those many times, as I mentioned, and we hired 250 employees. It's always a very lengthy process. It's a very lengthy process. It's a very costly process, but it is worth it. And because the costs are so minor compared to the expense, if you think about struggling for years to change the habits and the attitudes of employees. Prospective employees also always meet with the most senior person in the organization when they're hired. In a hotel, that will be the general manager. In the home office, it's me or a member of my leadership team. And this isn't so we can veto or change the decision of the team that's done the recruiting and done the vetting. It's so the prospective employee who's joining the organization at whatever level knows that the most senior person in their area thinks their job is very important, and there are no unimportant jobs. It's also a first step in our organization in building a very meaningful relationship with our employees, getting to know them right out of the gate. And they can go home and tell their mother, tell their father, tell their wife, I met the boss today, and that's even before they start. Because at Four Seasons, our bosses aren't seen in that manner. We think of them as mentors, as coaches. We expect our general managers, for example, to inspect our hotel rooms. Yes, walk the floors, look at what's going on, to be on the receiving dock sometimes, to be eating lunch in the employee cafeteria. Not to ensure that the housekeeper hasn't left a hair in the sink or that the food's up to scratch, but really so the staff knows that the most senior person in the business is engaged in every element of the customer experience. Excuse me. And so that they again get the reinforcement that each job is important and requires commitment. So our manager's role, to bring out the best in high-performing teams, to make them win, not by setting and enforcing rules generally, but by living and breathing the company's core values, observing, questioning, advising, and being very accessible and very visible. As managers, we live in glass houses. Everything we do, every action, every word, travels like wildfire on the employee grapevine. And so if we're seen showing greater concern for power and status than we do for our core values, pretty soon we lose more than our direction. We will actually lose the trust of our employees. And if you lose the trust of your employees, you lose their belief in the organization. And that's almost impossible to get back. So we think trust and belief are fundamental to a healthy service culture at Four Seasons. We think when trust is lacking, employees won't do what we need them to do. And what we need them to do is open up, work together, work as a team, risk mistakes, share information, always do more than they have to do. In this context, and the quest to build trust in a culture is so very, very important. And as a result, it never allows our people to manage from their positions of power, but only manage by leading by example. And there are so many ways that we work every day to gain the trust and commitment of our employees. First off, we take their concerns and their complaints just as seriously as we take guest complaints. And we have processes in the hotels, in the home offices, in the regional offices to make sure that happens. We always improve the employee areas of a hotel when we renovate the guest areas. Again, sending a message to the guest, to the employees that we're reinvesting in our guest experience, but we're also reinvesting in our employee experience. We disallow class distinctions in parking lots and cafeterias. We're all in this together. And we establish concrete career plans for our people, which creates an enormous investment in the organization. And we adhere to the principle of promotion from within whenever we can. In every area, we try to empower employees, give them decision-making authority and support for the decisions that they make. Sometimes right, sometimes not, but it doesn't matter. They get support for those decisions. And with that, they've proven to be able to do truly extraordinary things. Just tell you a couple of stories. Seamstress one time in our Four Seasons hotel in New York, who went home. She was had been given a gown to repair, and she noticed one of the pearl buttons on the gown was missing. But the gown was for an event that night, and she had no replacements. But she knew she had one on her sweater at home. She went home, cut it off, brought it in, sewed it on, and the gown was ready to go for the guest that evening. Steward, this time in Bali, who saw a guest admiring a lovely copper wok and talking about how this would be great to be able to take something like this home with him in order to do the recipes he'd learned that day at cooking school. As soon as the steward was off work, off he went to the local market, bought the pot, brought it back to the guest, and the guest took that home. And it's the kind of people we hire that do those kinds of things because they get a lot of satisfaction, a lot of happiness, and a lot of pleasure from meeting these types of challenges. We also set high performance standards. 99.9% perfection, customer satisfaction, not good enough. But that doesn't mean mistakes don't get made. They do. And again, if you think about our business, it's mostly about service being delivered by people across the organization. There's hundreds of things that go wrong every day. Little things, big things, every day. But it's not about those mistakes. They will happen. In fact, we probably get more guest complaints at Four Seasons than any other chain on the planet, mostly because our guests have higher expectations. But what we always hear from guests about is the efforts our employees make to respond to the mishaps whenever they occur. Four Seasons, we call this service recovery. Recently, we heard from a gentleman who had visited one of our hotels. He happened to be wearing a white lidded jacket, coffee spilled on the arm, as it sometimes can be done, dripping from a pot. A normal response might have been a towel and some sparkling water, but instead, the server in this case asked the gentleman if he had a few extra moments, he'd have his coat dry cleaned. And so he took the jacket down to our valet, had it dry cleaned while lunch was finished, brought it back spanking new. And the story the guest tells today is not about the dripping coffee pot, but it is about how his jacket was quickly dry cleaned and returned to him, and how that service recovery left an indelible mark, an indelible memory in his mind. And he wrote to us telling us how impressed he was with that employee. At Four Seasons, as I said before, we're treating our employees as members of an elite team. And we find that when you do that, people do live up to that image. They do rise to those occasions, to those challenges. They become more proud of their roles, more self-confident, they have more self-discipline, and a huge amount of commitment. Confidence is a really, really important part in this job because so often our employees are called upon to make decisions, to engage with guests when they are on their own. And so making sure that they have constant training to improve those skills and the opportunity to learn new ones. We also have a special benefit for employees. It's the Complimentary Rooms program, which allows all employees all around the world to be a guest once in a while and to stay at a Four Seasons of their choosing and feel what that service experience is like on the receiving end. It's a nice perk, but it's driven by a very, very simple business need, which is to make sure all of our employees understand the value of what it is they're giving to the guest and let them experience that as a consumer once in a while. As a result of a whole lot of things, the Dean mentioned we were on Fortune's list again last week, 15th time in a row. We're extremely proud of this accolade, and it is similar to ones that this company earns around the world. And the strong sense of loyalty that our employees feel to the company has a direct impact on our success. Our turnover, quite low in an industry where turnover is really at some levels that normal businesses would find unacceptable. That's just the hotel business. But we have a low turnover rate in this business where about 100% would be the norm. And the longer employees stay with us, the more our productivity rises. And the better the service becomes, the happier the guest. The happier the guest, the more return guest, the greater the connection between the employee and the guest, and so on and so on and so on. And so we end up with more repeat guests and a better business model everywhere. So the key for us is always connecting with our guests and people on an emotional level. And it's something that our employees do every single day. Whether it's a salesperson dealing with a client or a housekeeper helping a guest, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of energy, as we all know, to be emotionally connected with the people that we're working with. And I can assure you that some of our guests aren't that easy to connect with. But for us, no matter how difficult that situation, no matter how demanding the personalities, it always comes back to the same thing. It's a golden rule. How would I want to be treated if I was the person in this particular situation? And if we look at each interaction with that question in mind, and we tailor the service delivery to the particular needs of that person at that moment, we create some pretty impressive results. And our employee actions on this front create huge memories for our guests that they don't soon forget. And it is the passion of that workforce that is the power behind the business success. On a typical day, in a typical Four Seasons, there's about 4,000 points of contact between our employees and our customers. So just across the street here today, 4,000 times those employees will come into contact with a customer on some level. And that's just in one hotel. Multiply that by 86, and you can see daily thousands, hundreds of thousands of opportunities to do something about the brand experience. And each point of contact has the potential to reinforce or detract from the customer's view of Four Seasons. So the heightened intensity on these interactions, the focus on getting them right, is so very, very, very important and requires a huge commitment. And that commitment has to be adopted through each generation of employees. We're now 50 years old and have been at this for a very long time. Employees with long service records in the 35 years is not uncommon. I was in Philadelphia yesterday, one of our original hotels here in America, and there's a long list of people in there who are 28 years, 29 years, 30 years, now some of their children working in the hotel. And so generation after generation learning about the cycle of reinforcement around the guests. And we take this very seriously. We have about 35,000 employees around the world where this service culture is really in action, committed every day to achieving those very high levels of customer experience. When we think about commitment in our employees, we think about the way the dictionary defines it. We think about the way we define it. Webster calls commitment, it's a synonym for loyalty, they say, being obligated or emotionally impelled. The emotionally impelled part is where we see it. And our businesses are complicated, right? We have complicated businesses. We've got lots of processes, lots of systems. Even the hotel business is way more complicated today than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And every customer perception and every employee experience layered on top of that complicated, technical, technology-driven business is still really about feelings and beliefs. How did that make me feel? What do I have to believe in order to commit myself to Four Seasons? So as a result of all of that, the heart of a service organization, we believe, can't just be a bundle of systems and methods. This isn't something that you can write down or write about. Can't be just a series of intellectual concepts. It has to be a living, breathing thing. And it has to be focused on an emotional belief in the organization and the organization's future. And for us, we believe that the highest level of service excellence for Four Seasons comes when employees identify completely with the values of the organization, when they believe their personal future is linked to the company's future, and more importantly, when they think that the future of the company is dependent on their personal performance. For us, it's really, again, back the heart of our culture, the golden rule. It's a simple premise, but it really is understood in every culture, in every religion. There is a concept of treating others the way you would want to be treated. And it is the universality of the values that are summed up in that golden rule that gives our culture its emotional power. And it allows us, every time we open a hotel, and we open a few every year, to take a group of seemingly ordinary people, because the vast majority of our employees in every new hotel, we're going to open this year in Baku, Azerbaijan. The vast majority of those employees will be hired right there in Baku. And taking that group of people who's never stayed at a Four Seasons, never heard of a Four Seasons, never worked oftentimes in a hotel before, and teach them what it means to be part of this culture and turn that hotel into a world-class service organization as well. Motivated, we hope, by the inner need to do well by others and to delight and surprise guests in Baku the same way we do in London, Paris, and here in Baltimore. And since the downturn, I've been asked a lot of times, does this formula still work? Is it still true? Every conference you go to, every phone call from an investor, are you sure this business model is still relevant? And I believe that, in fact, it could not be more so. That's not to say that things never change. Of course they do. For example, the proliferation of social media has completely altered the way people communicate with one another and has layered in new challenges in a business that relies for success on its emotional connection with customers. But that in turn has made us look at how we're communicating with our customers. And years ago when the internet first came around, can we let people make a reservation by email was the question. That seems like such an archaic comment today, but the reality is the way we connect with one another is changing as rapidly as the time of day. And we as a company are continuing to evolve with that and looking at how we deliver that personalized experience through our new website, through our social media channels, and staying in touch with our customers in very, very many different ways. We had a guest with us recently in Santa Barbara, and Twitter is one of those fearful things that companies have to deal with today, because consumers are very, very vocal about what they think and feel on Twitter real time. So she checked into the hotel, didn't like the music that was on the nightstand radio. And normally you might change the channel, call the front desk for a new CD. Today, no, we tweet. So she tweeted, and a lot of people read it, that she had just checked into the Four Seasons Santa Barbara and the music was completely inappropriate, more in keeping with a beheading, she said, or a funeral. So lucky for us, our social media manager at the hotel was online, picked up the tweet, put some discs together, ran to the room, and said maybe some of these are more in keeping with your liking. Well, unbeknownst to us, this was a very influential blogger in the travel space, so she immediately tweeted this service recovery, remember service recovery? This service recovery story to her vast following of friends. That report eventually reached over 500,000 people via Twitter and ultimately made it into the mainstream media, which tells us something about the power of the story. But that's going on thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times a day. So as a company, we've now got people who are mobilized around staying in touch with customers that way as well. And it's a very daunting task. But we think about it in the vast array of how we service our customers. So we're easy to reach, however you want to reach us, and a pleasure to deal with, however you want to deal with us. So as it turns out, this is just a wonderful example. It happened at Cindy Rocco's hotel. In fact, she's here with us in Baltimore today for some pretty exciting stuff we're working on at Four Seasons. But it is happening, as I say, all around the world. And it's a wonderful example of how the relationship between our customers, our employees, our business partners is going to continue to evolve. But it's another example of how our core values drive a response in that new environment that is the same as the response would have been if she'd called the front desk or let somebody know in a different manner. We're just going to have to meet those guest expectations and guest requirements in new and innovative ways. And in fact, that's what we're here working on today. So thanks for your very warm welcome. I hope that helps a little bit in setting the tone for why and how some things happen at Four Seasons and for how we think about the business. We look very forward to deepening our business connections here in this wonderful and vibrant city and to welcoming many of you either here in Baltimore to visit us or to another Four Seasons where your travels take you. So I think at this point, we're going to move to questions, and I've been asked to remind everyone, so everyone can hear you, please use the microphone.
And as I say when I do town hall meetings at the hotels, your questions do not have to be related to the presentation I just gave. If there's anything else you'd like to know, I know a lot of secrets.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
By the way, thank you very much for the presentation. Toronto's my hometown, so welcome to Baltimore.
Go Leafs.
Absolutely. So the question I've got is a two-part question. A lot of companies have these amazing plaques on the wall with their values, but they don't embody them in their employees. So how do you get people to actually bring it into their hearts and minds? And the second part is, when you have people that have been doing this for a while, how do you combat complacency?
Okay, so first of all, the plaque. We have a beautiful plaque, gorgeous plaque, right in the front lobby of our office building. And it sets out our core values, and it sets out the pillars of our company. We put that plaque there in 2007. So the plaque comes way later. It's not the first thing you do. It can be the first thing you do, depending on where your culture's at, but you're right. It's more about the meat of the matter. How do you get the culture instilled in the people? And what we believe, and have, I think, proven through the way the Golden Rule has rolled out in Four Seasons, is that it's all about leadership. If your leader at any level does not embody the values that you say are the core values of the organization, then you must ask that person to leave. And it doesn't matter if they're the most qualified chief financial officer, the most star-studded salesperson. If they are a person that is not walking the talk, so to speak, the message you send to the rest of the employees is that the cultural fabric of the company is a farce, because that person, for reasons that are justifiable in business terms, is allowed to behave in ways that are contrary to core values. And so when we open, I mentioned in my talk that years ago when we first started to talk about our Golden Rule values, our founder, my mentor and predecessor as the CEO, Izzy Sharp, and if you've read his book, you'll see there's a whole chapter in there. He talks about having to make those very difficult decisions, to ask senior leaders in the company who he'd been with for many years, but he knew they weren't going to be able to be consistent with the value system he saw as so important to growing the employee culture. And he did make those tough decisions, and he continued to make them, and I've continued to make them at the top of the house. But it's not just there. When we open a new hotel, the most important decision we make is who's going to lead that new hotel. And is that person going to carry the culture? Because we promote most of our people from within, we're pretty sure that by the time they get to become senior leaders in the company, that they have adopted the culture, they live the culture, they breathe the culture. And it is attitudinal, it is emotional. When we hire people, we do a lot of testing around their emotional beliefs, their reactions. We call it behavioral-based interviewing. We want to know what drives their value system. We want to know what kinds of things have caused them to make good or bad decisions, what's in their head when they're faced with a challenge. Because you're going to learn a lot about a person when you see them in a stressed position. What's the value system under stress? And so as we open new hotels, the leadership team is critical, because they then go on to pick the other 200, 300, 400 people that get to join the family. And each one of those choices is so very important. So leadership is a huge part of it. I think focus is a huge part of it. You heard me tell the story about the hiring process, interviewing people 4 or 5 times before they get to join the company. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. And it would be easy to say, oh, we should do that, and then everybody stops doing it because it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time and the resources that are devoted to it. But we don't. We say, no, 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 focus on who gets to join the family. Because if you get that right, then you will get the guest experience right. And if you get it wrong, we get it wrong too. People will come in, they do their behavioral-based interview, and they fake you out. And they get into the organization and they're not a culture carrier. And they might be the anti-culture carrier. Deal with it quickly. No malingering, because the employees are watching. And if that person is allowed to stay and be paid and flourish, even though they're working against the company's values, then employees start to say, this isn't real. They're not focused on this really, truly. This is a lot of window dressing. So whatever your value system is in your organization, I think the test of whether it's alive and well is you can get that through surveys, but it's all about, do your employees truly believe that the company believes and senior leadership believes and the guy next to him believes in that culture? And it's a hard thing to do. There are many, many other things that our leaders do in the hotels to keep this alive and well. Once a month, once a quarter, they will meet with line staff and the employee. The most senior person dives right down to the most junior people in the organization and sits and talks to them about what's going on in the business, shares ideas with them, but hears from them directly. I chair a direct line in the corporate office. I meet with the most junior people in the office. They send me notes when I'm on the road. I got one yesterday about something that's going on that might be just a little off culture. I've got to investigate those things because that's misalignment. That's sending a message that we have two classes of employees, that there's one set of rules for one, a different set for another. All of a sudden, the trust and belief that's so important to a strong culture starts to go away. So I think it starts with leadership, it ends with leadership, but it's all in the execution. It's making sure every single day you have your focus on the thing you value. And I continue to remind the employees, we don't do this because it makes us feel good. It does make us feel good. It makes Four Seasons a nice place to work. There's a great camaraderie there. There's great teamwork. But at its heart, it's a business proposition. It's about how do we create an outstanding group of employees, 35,000 of them, who all understand what the job one is today, which is to make happy guests. To make happy guests, to make happy guests. Now, they'll all get there a slightly different way, but to have achieved that kind of alignment with 35,000 employees in 35 countries through adherence to a culture is a powerful business message. And yes, it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of focus, and people say, through the recession, some of our business partners, you guys can't be serious. You can't be serious, you're going to keep doing that. Yes, we are going to keep doing that because it is at the heart of the service model. Did I answer your question?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Glenn Steinbach. I work here at the Carey School. And I would imagine that your business, like most, have been challenged due to the economic conditions over the past 4 years. And it's caused you to have to figure out how to do more with less. I'd like to know if, in fact, that's true. How have you approached that, and how have you managed to do more with less? Thank you.
Thank you. That's, in fact, very true. As I said, this business was one of the hardest hit in America in particular, but Europe was no exception. We're now going through a very precarious time in the Middle East. So because of the geographic diversification of this business, we have a crisis just about every year at Four Seasons. So we're becoming pretty good at managing around that. And I think the key to managing through difficult times, we're 50 years old. This was our 5th major recession. I think this one was deeper and longer and more challenging than others because hospitality actually was at the heart, in some cases, of the fight over the economic ruin, because whether you were a company holding an event or somebody traveling on a private jet, travel just kept being regurgitated in the Wall Street Journal as something of a great evil, particularly at the luxury end. So we had both the economics and the politics pressing on this business. So what we did was we said, we are not going to lose our focus on the guest experience. Okay, that's the product. You don't change the product. Mercedes does a lot of things in a downturn too, but what they don't do is take half the parts out of the car and try to sell it to you for the same price and just hope for the best. You have to focus on the product if you want to still be in business. when the good times begin gradually to come. So that's our focus, guest experience. And what we said was, look, we don't have all the answers at the top of the house. We're in 35 countries. All these hotels are different. They're different sizes. We have a 500-room hotel in Sydney and a 15-tented tent camp in Chiang Rai, Thailand. Everybody's response needs to be local and needs to be focused. And we gave our people permission, very important, permission to think outside the box in their own environment about how they were going to deliver on the guest experience and the employee experience while still cutting expenses. Because revenues, remember, were way down. Demand was way down. Prices had fallen, but most importantly, occupancy was down more than anyone had seen since World War II. And so it was a very, very troubled time. But I personally am gratified by what happened, because what we saw was an organization of people who cared about one another and cared passionately about the guest. And so they did a lot of really smart things. I'll give you an example. I was in a hotel where flowers are a big part of the experience in luxury hotels, but they're very expensive, very expensive. And this hotel decided that they would continue to have their flowers in the lobby, the way you would see them over at the hotel across the street, but they had also put flowers on every floor in the elevator lobby. And what they did was they went out and commissioned a local artist to bring in their sculpture, their glass sculpture work, and where the flowers were, they placed these beautiful glass sculptures by this local artist. And so, in so doing, they reduced the cost in their flower budget. They enhanced the authenticity of the guest experience because they were bringing local artists into the building. They actually helped the community because that artist sold a couple of pieces as a result of displaying them in those lobbies. And so it's just, for me, a small example, but it sort of fired for the company on all cylinders, engaged the employees in something exciting as well. And it was a homemade solution. Now, it doesn't work in every hotel because not all hotels had elevator lobbies and the like, but for them, very smart, and the list goes on and on and on of examples like that. So empowering, but focused on maintaining that all-important guest experience. And we did see our service scores stay strong through the downturn, which was very heartening. As things started to improve, service scores sort of stayed the same. We thought they would go up. They are now trending up again. I think guest expectations through the downturn changed a little bit as well because everybody was under such great pressure. But the value proposition in your business has to be maintained. Otherwise, if you cut the heart out of that, then there's not a whole lot left. Yes?
Hi, my name is Paul Christo. I'm a physician at Johns Hopkins. How do you achieve reproducibility of a high-quality product? That is, if you're a small organization and there are one or two individuals who have the skill set, how do you expand that to other employees who can achieve the same high degree of skill set and then enable the organization to expand nationally or internationally?
Well, it's interesting. It sort of relates back to the question on the downturn, because one of the other things that we were forced to do through the Great Recession was look at labor. Labor is 70% of the total cost of operating a hotel, is in people, and it's generally pretty fixed. If you're going to have a hotel, you got to have a general manager. If you're going to have a restaurant, you got to have a chef. If you're going to have guest rooms, you're going to have room attendants. So the people component of this business, the cost of it is big. It can't be automated, and it needs to be managed. One of the things we did going into the downturn, because we could see the warning signs coming in early 2008, was we put a hiring freeze in place and an attrition freeze in place. So when jobs opened up, we didn't fill them because we knew we were going to go into a very difficult time, and we wanted to reduce the number of layoffs that might have to occur as a result of the reduction in occupancy. But in order to make that work, we had to work with our employees to get them to job share. So we had people in the finance department who agreed one day a week they'd go over to be the assistant spa manager. We had people who worked in the laundry who a couple of days a week would help out with landscaping. We had people, at one point there was, I met one young man, he had 10 uniforms because he was working in 10 different departments across the company. And while this was hard for us because it was a move away from our normal business model, there was this unbelievable, and some would say lucky benefit insofar as we learned that this cross-pollination was good on many fronts. The first was it solved the economic problem of how to keep our people together through very trying times. The second was that we ended up with much better trained employees after the fact with a much higher sensitivity level to the challenges of another department. You know, in the old days, finance might have thought that SPA was, you know, those guys, they're SPA. I'm not sure they know how to count. But once we started doing some of this cross-pollination, there was a real empathy formed between different departments about the challenges in those departments and different skill sets. And we actually had people who changed careers. That young lady I mentioned, she's now in the SPA manager development program because she's decided that's really where she wants to be. So that's one way to do it, is through job share. The other is to, you know, just in terms of how you deploy teams. Last night, I stayed in, ordered room service here at the hotel. Lovely young lady from room service, brought my salad. She says, give us a call when you'd like your plate picked up. I did. Young man came. And I said, oh, hi. I said, the room service lady, she didn't leave the tray, because I ate on my table looking out at your gorgeous view here. And I said, are you sure you're going to be fine? And he said, I think I'll be okay. He says, I'm not actually from room service. I'm just helping out. And I said, oh, where do you work? He says, I'm the bellman. And I said, well, that's great. So he came up. They were having a crunch last night in the hotel. And it was his job to help them sort out the guest experience. So the more opportunities we can manufacture in our business for those kinds of cross-functional opportunities for employees, the better we are at responding to the guest, but they also the better workforce you have because they can respond to each other in a much different way. You can also do it through formal training, and we do this with young, we call them MITs, managers in training, who come into the company from universities, lots of hospitality schools, and the way that program begins is that they spend some time in a variety of different places, even if they have declared, I'm a finance kid, I'm a marketing kid, whatever it is they want to be in life, even if they've declared that, we put them through these different places in a hotel so they have a chance to experience different parts of the business. And I always tell young recruits, the hotel business is the greatest place to work in the world because you get to see so many different kinds of work and never change the address of where you go every day. You can see what advertising and how it works. You can look at finance and see how it works. You can dabble in HR and see how it works. All of these different disciplines rolled up to one in the microcosm that is a hotel. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, both formal and informal, and I think we've tried both.
I was curious as to how you or the Four Seasons organization goes about identifying information systems management. Do you guys in-house it? Or if you outsource it, how do you go about choosing the vendors to provide you the service necessary that a lot of people expect?
Well, it's a really, really, really big question. I'll try to give it a short answer. It's very complicated, information technology for a company like ours. Hotels generally, and our business is no different than others, grow up one at a time. They're sort of like children, you know. You give birth to them and off they go and they walk, and then later on we figure out what they'll wear to the prom, and everything's individual. Hotels are like that too. So when a hotel is born, historically you put systems in it that were available in that country, that were suitable for that hotel. And so a few years ago, we took a look around, and back then we probably had 70 hotels, but we had 70 different operating systems across the business. And so we've been slowly trying to streamline that so that we could take advantage of some of the new technology, which is cross-platform, in order to get to some synergies between the businesses. Job sharing that I mentioned earlier, we're now able to do that because of what we've done with some systems technology. We're now able to job share across geographies. And so, this different hotels in different markets might share a revenue manager, somebody who helps them remotely with the work they're trying to do. And so we're exploring all of that. But it's very difficult and it's very expensive, because once you put the servers in the buildings and once you've bought the software and once you've got everybody trained up and everything's plugged in and you've adapted it and linked it and done all of those things to kind of uncouple that and get everybody onto a new system is going to be, for us, I think, a 5-year journey. So we launched the 5-year technology roadmap last year. We are in the very early stages of a rollout right now on a global procurement system, which will be our first global system. We have new HR software that got implemented last year, being rolled out to the hotels just now, which will be a SaaS model. So we're moving a lot of our needs into the cloud. And this will help us do, I think, a couple of things. One, we're going to get standardization in the hotels. So when a young person from Julian's hotel moves over to Cindy's hotel, they won't need to be retrained on all the new systems that are in the different hotels, which is very, very time consuming. The other thing it will allow us to do is share information across the company more effectively. Now, if I was to ask for a report on X, it might take a week for 85 different hotels to produce that manually, depending on what the report was. We do have a global financial system, but it isn't linked into all of our sales and marketing systems, all of our forward-looking forecasting systems. We'll eventually get to that in the next couple of years. So it's going to create a lot more efficiency and effectiveness in the business. And I think that'll be a big win. And then just the collaboration around problem solving that people will be able to do because everybody's using the same system. We take a lot of advice to your question on who does this. We hired a CIO about 1.5 years ago, very qualified guy who came out of the travel industry, but a different part of the travel industry. He said to me on about the end of his first quarter, we sat down and had a little bit of a debrief, and he said, the bad news, he says, is that you don't have anything. And I said, oh, that's bad. And he said, no, but there's good news. He said, the good news is you don't have anything. He said, the world is transitioning right now so rapidly as it relates to technology. It was good, he said, we hadn't invested in any kind of global platforms and global footprints. So under his tutelage, we've gone out and we're speaking to a number of the big vendors, as well as the big advisors on these huge project rollouts. All names that you would recognize, but that's part of it. And as part of this, one of the things we've tried to do is shut down the one-offs in the hotels. I want to get a new da-da-da system. Just a minute. That we then get back to replicating 85. You then have to support 85. You have to integrate 85, and the churn and the cost on that is very, very high in our business. So we're at a pretty important inflection point as it relates to technology at the moment. And the good news is the employees are excited about it. So it's a good time. Are we out of time? Well, I think we're out of time. Let me just say thank you once again.